Unitarian Universalist congregation with no geographical boundary, working toward creating a global spiritual community, rooted in profound love, which cultivates wonder, imagination, and the courage to act. Adapting to the COVID-19 pandemic has been difficult for many bricks and mortar congregations. Early on in the pandemic, we were in a unique position to assist many congregations with the transition. We hosted special episodes of The View, provided advice and counseling to religious professionals, and trained congregations for live streaming worship, all while providing robust online programming for our members. From worship to covenant groups, from classes to pastoral care, and from our monthly magazine to our letter writing ministry, we have found ways to build connection and community even through the screen. We have been a model for ministry on the margins, providing services for isolated Unitarian Universalists, becoming a spiritual lifeline for our members in prison, and investing in innovative ministry. We know better than anyone how deep and meaningful connections can be formed even from a distance. Unitarian Universalists have faced many challenges in these times, and we continue to persevere and to fight for justice and equity for all people, especially during moments of crisis. We are proud to be a leader in this faith movement, and we invite you to get involved in our ministry. We strive to be a place where anyone from anywhere can find spiritual refuge anytime they need it. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Larger Fellowship. We are so excited to bring you an all-new episode of The View. The View is a weekly Unitarian Universalist talk show discussing important faith-based topics from an anti-racist, anti-oppressive, and multicultural perspective. Every Thursday for the past 7 years, we have welcomed guests from every corner of the world. Our guests are writers, scholars, activists, and religious thought leaders who are shaping Unitarian Universalism and society for the 21st century and beyond. I hope today's show inspires you. Hope it builds your faith. Hope it gives you perspective to see the power of Unitarian Universalism at work in your life. Enjoy the message.
Greetings to the welcome to 2023, our first episode of 2023 here on the Voices of Unitarian Universalism, also known as The View or The VU. If you're Kiana Danae Perkins, it's The VU, and welcome VUers to our show. We are so happy to have you here today. I'm Reverend Dr. Michael Tino, one-third of the lead ministry team here at the Church of the Larger Fellowship, our Unitarian Universalist congregation without borders or walls. And I am coming to you from Peekskill, New York, about 40 miles north of New York City in the Hudson Valley, on the land of the Kitchewan and Wappinger bands of the Lenape people. And it is a gray, rainy winter day, and I'm just glad it's not snow. And I'm maybe alone in that. There are people that are really hoping that it will snow here. I'm good without it, even though it would be normal in New York. It's great to have you here. We're going to have our hosts introduce themselves. Kiana Danae Perkins, coiner of the VU, is with us today. How are you today?
I'm feeling, I made a Muppet face. I'm feeling like a Muppet, exaggerated and happy. And that's where I'm at. So my name, for those of you who don't know me, is Kiana Danae, both names, like George Michael. And I am in Ann Arbor, Michigan, on the land of the Potawatomi people, and worked and labored by Black and Brown people of the diaspora. I'm excited to be here. It is 40 and raining in Michigan in January, but we're good. It's not snow. Also, I don't know what time it is because there's no cloud. It's like being in Seattle. I don't know how Aisha does it. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Big A. What's up, Tonti?
Hello, I'm Aisha Hauser, and I am in Seattle, Washington, land of the Duwamish and the Coast Salish people. And it is always in the 40s and raining. And although Happy New Year, and over the Christmas break, I was actually on the East Coast watching on social media, as I think most of the world, Seattleites, unable to get up icy hills. And it was funny to me because I was not in Seattle at the time. I don't know how funny it was for people here because I remember being here the last few years where they have to close off entire streets because it is hilly and we don't have that many plows in Seattle because snow has been a recent phenomenon that happens, let alone ice. Ice, no one is used to even walking on it, let alone doing anything else. So cold and rainy like the rest of where you all are. So that's pretty cool. And I am in the living room with my dog because I have guests here and it's fun. And she's a shelter dog who sometimes can maybe get afraid and snap at people. But we're working on it. So I'm in here with her where I am not usually. So very happy to be here with you all. Happy New Year. DC, I miss you all. How are you, DC?
I am well. I am coming to you from Sealands Grove, Pennsylvania, in the Great Susquehanna Valley, which is the historic home of the Susquehanna peoples, who are part of the Lenni Lenape cohort, and it is pissing down rain. We're supposed to get a full inch of rain today, and again, like, I don't understand how these Seattle people do it. Like, I can't tell whether it's 10 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon. Eventually it'll get dark and I'll know it's time to eat. Like, like, that's just that. Like, oh boy, oh boy. But I am off this week, so I am having some fun rehabbing my house, which seems to be the perpetual hobby of the year. But it's doing all right. I'd rather have rain, frankly, than snow because I don't have to shovel rain. That makes me happy. But yeah, things are doing well, and I'm glad to be here. Glad to be back on the VU after some time off. Michael, what are we doing today?
We are very excited to have guests from the UU Women's Federation joining us, and they have lots of interesting things to talk to us about. But before we introduce our guests, we like to do a little bit of UU Roundup, and there are like a couple of really exciting things happening in Unitarian Universalism this week that we just want to make sure that we mention and not talk a whole lot about because we could talk the whole hour about them. Um, and we don't want to do that because we have great guests. So it is the 30 Days of Love campaign happening with our friends at Side with Love. Kiana Dene, you want to tell us a little bit about how you're engaging with that? Or what's exciting you about that? You're muted.
I'm 3 years in and I'm still muted. This is who
Oh,
I am,
good.
people. If this is who I am in all of my entirety. But Side with Love, which is one of our campaign wings on the UU Bird, is spending 30 days engaging in being loving, mindful, body practice, prayer, spirituality, meditation, and really just helping us rotate and focus around love. So there's information you can find at Side of Love, you can find on the Facebooks, on all the social medias, but it's a way to just settle our hearts and minds in the year for the year and to settle them in love. And so look for all of that. There's great contributors. I might have a little something up in there. I know my friend Karen might have a little something up in there. So just keep looking out and looking forward. It is a way, just I said, to ground your life in love for this 2023 season.
Super. It's always exciting to see what they're going to bring that's new and interesting, and these embodied practices are really quite lovely this year. So thank you for participating in that. And of course, the big thing happening in the UU universe this week is that the Article 2 Study Commission has released its final report to the board, and if you don't know what the Article 2 Study Commission is, we need to get them back on the show, because they are the people who have been tasked with the every 15-year review of Article 2 of the UUA bylaws. Isn't that exciting? Article 2 of the UUA bylaws, for those of you who are not institutional policy people, is commonly known as the purposes, principles, and sources of Unitarian Universalism. It is really the foundational part of our gathering as Unitarian Universalist congregations. And we revise it on purpose every 15 years because we are a living faith, and we understand that our faith has to evolve and has to transform in response to new information and new people and new ways of being in the world and new challenges that we're given. And I commend to you, we'll put in the show notes the link to their report. I hope that you will engage with this and read this. I hope that those of you who are out there who love our principles and sources will not be too shocked that it is different than what we have now. It's different on purpose, and it is different beautiful. And the Article 2 Commission uh, has
Sorry.
moved us to a proposal of centering around values, the core of which is love. And
Elandria!
yes, Elandria Williams, our ancestor, former co-moderator of blessed memory, actually did a lot of work framing this for the Article 2 Commission. And Aisha, you wanted to say something about this?
Well, I want to name that we are a faith without a creed.
Mm-hmm.
No one knows what happens after we die. We can make shit up every day as we go along. So here's the thing. If you are so enamored, and before you eat your oatmeal in the morning, you read the 7 principles, print them out, frame them, you can keep them forever.
Mm-hmm.
So this notion that there's this, it's not, I mean, it's this, there's, there are folks that are, committed to save our principles. And here's my thing about that. Revelation is not sealed. And if you want those group of words arranged the way they are with the number 7, have at it. Everybody doesn't need to hold on to them. The association as a whole and Unitarian Universalism as a whole is a living tradition, as you mentioned, Michael. And so to that end, we are going to adapt to life as we live it as humans. But again, if you choose that this is what you put it on a pillow, you could cross stitch it. You could put words on cross stitch. You could cuddle it at night. You could have them as wallpaper. Do what you need to. But you know what? What's not helpful is creating some bullshit fight that we don't need. We're in a slow moving apocalypse. Let's center love. You keep your principles, boo. Do what you need to. Hug them at night.
Well, and the commission over the course of a week even went so far as to highlight the words that they kept from the principles. Most of the things that we care about, inherent worth and dignity and interdependence and justice and compassion, are still in there. They're still in there. People they're moving us to, instead of the democratic process, inclusive democratic processes, which is a change I think is 30 years overdue.
Yes.
On these 40-year-old principles. I think they're really very beautiful. And could I quibble about a couple of individual words and phrases? Sure. And is it up to me? No. It's really not.
Right. And I think I did a sermon on this particular issue, and I talked about, have our principles become our creed? Have they become too holy to touch, too holy to change? And how do we remain relevant as a living faith in a changing world? And I did a little research, and I read up about the Humanist Manifesto, and that's in its third complete rewrite.
Yeah.
because they understand that in order to be relevant, they need to adjust their language every so often, to address the changes in culture and science and knowledge and information, and it makes sense. Anyway,
So I'm gonna gently move us along. Read it.
Please.
Talk with us about it. We're going to invite the commission on. We'll invite board members on. We'll have conversations about this all spring. I guarantee you that this will not be the last you will hear about this on the VOO,
like it or
now
not.
NGA, because it's huge.
Yes.
And so engage with the conversations with us and with others, but do it centering love,
Correct.
like the proposal asks us to do. So I'm going to gently move us to welcome our guests, because they have wonderful things to talk about.
Yes.
And our guests are the two national organizers for the Unitarian Universalist Women's Federation. Candace Hassan is originally from New Orleans and lives in Atlanta, works as the national organizer with the UU Women's Federation and has been there for a little over 6 months. Much of her organizing background is in reproductive justice and abortion access, and we're super excited to welcome Candace. And Antoinette Scully is another UU Women's Federation national organizer who lives in Los Angeles. She has been Unitarian Universalist since 2011, attends First UU in Los Angeles, and also organizes for racial and environmental justice in the San Fernando Valley. So Antoinette and Candace, welcome. And yes, Antoinette, thank you for getting up so early Pacific time to join us here on the VOO. Welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm over here crying, laughing at all of the commentary that you are. So funny. I'm new to the UU, so I feel like this is a great experience. I'm just learning so much more about like the ins and outs and like what individual perceptions about it. So I appreciate it. Thank you all for inviting us.
So,
Yeah.
Oh, Antoinette, go ahead.
I was gonna say I'm not new to UU, so I'm one of those that's like, yeah, I get it. Let's move on. Let's make some updates. I'm ready for it. Let's do it.
So I'm super interested in the position of UU Women's Federation national organizer, and I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the creation of those positions and like what your goals are in that job, because that's new, right?
Yeah,
Am I making that up? Okay, good.
No, we are the first. Yeah, the UU Women's Federation has been around since '63, I believe, and so it's mostly been volunteer, and within the last couple of years, it was like a working board, and so they spent some time over the past couple of years, I think right before the pandemic, to try and build out what a staff person would be doing. We wanted to engage more within the congregations. We wanted to be able to go and visit people with, talk about going to ground sometimes. And so what we were hired on to do was to build those deeper relationships with people who know UU Women's Federation and have been volunteering and working with us for a while, and then building new relationships to bring in more inclusivity and more diversity that we believe Women's Federation hasn't had the opportunity to build over the past few decades.
And I would just add that much of the position is new, and also everything that we're doing is new also. So like community gatherings, book club, like joining this podcast, for example, like, so it's almost as if our positions are being written ourselves, if that makes sense. Like we're kind of like have our hands on all the things, and we're kind of like tasked to, like Antoinette said, like just grow our relationships, deepen our relationships, really investigate what do our members want from us. Like we've been around so long, but kind of like really tapping into exactly what do you want to see from us? How can we better serve you all in your congregations? So kind of like just like working that out as we go on, and what does that look like, and talking with each other and writing, and just different, putting out content, joining this podcast, just kind of like to see exactly what else is out there for us to get a feel of.
I have a question. So I was just thinking as you both were talking, I've never joined the UU Women's Federation. I'm not sure. Well, no, I have a little bit of a clue. Perceived it as a mostly white organization. Now, I know that I don't want to erase anyone, especially Black women. I know that there are Black and brown women as part of the Federation. It's just, I guess my perception, because a lot of, I know white women friends who've been even in leadership, but it genuinely never occurred to me to join. Because I haven't found an allure of it. I'm like, I'm already, I'm president of the Liberal Religious Education Association. So I have an association that I'm very attached to in many ways and love. So I'm curious, when you were both brought on, like, were you given I don't want to say true history, because no one's no, a lot of people are intentionally lying. I was about to say something that wasn't true, especially in the United States. But were you given kind of a complete picture of some of the challenges the Federation has had? And if yes, are you also tasked with growing? Are you tasked with growing the association or federation? What is it I hear, Candace, you saying that you're kind of building building the plane as you're flying it kind of thing.
Yeah.
But what attracted you to a job like this?
Yeah. So like I said, I've been UU, so I've had terrible congregational life instances. I'm a Black woman in UU churches. Like I totally get it, and it's I can see the question is it the same in the Federation? And the answer to that is that we have a deep history of the same type of liberal whiteness that Unitarian Universalist has. And so I've been tasked personally, Candace and I were hired on so that we could grow that in a way that didn't push out people, but also built space to be more inclusive so that we could have the types of people that are in Unitarian Universalism, the types of women and femmes, non-binary, trans, so that we could say that we are the inclusive women's federation that we want to be, and not just in name. So yes, we're doing the work. It's hard. It's, I think in the same way that people are frustrated or growing with the Article 2 Commission, we're on the same path. We're, updating our language, we're updating the type of work that we're doing. We are continuing our advocacy work, but also trying to make it more personal and much more active, and not just saying that we do a thing, but doing the thing that we want done.
So friends, I wanna chime in and share some tenderness, some real tenderness. We're gonna get real. I might take off my glasses real. I literally this morning before this conversation was responding to an email from Anne. She reached out. She's the president of the Women's Federation. She reached out to just share with, I believe, whomever in the database is considered Black. I don't know, because our people of the women of the global majority. All the shades of brown, to say, hey, in all of our conversations, we're getting feedback that there is a need for space for all of you to coalesce, to come together and be and support each other. And I wrote her back and said, hey, this is something I've been trying to do. We would love some institutional support. And it's called Black Women of the Chalice. We do it once a month. Me and Dana Matthews Moore, who's also at Star King School for the ministry. And Anne wrote back, she's like, yes, let's meet, let's do this. So I have to be really honest and tender when I tell you that my anti-Blackness and anti-classism showed up today. Because when I got in this room and I saw the both of you, I thought, oh, they must be interns. No, that's my shit. I'm owning that 100%. I'm not liking the words that are coming out of my mouth, but I can't be afraid of them either. But because of my own internalized stuff, because of my own internalized experiences with Unitarian Universalism, it is rare for me to see Black folks in leadership roles. And the second thought I had, to be really serious, is, oh, Anne must be busy doing other important stuff and she just sent the interns. So I had to unpack all of that shit real quick. And so just know, and I'm saying this with all of the tenderness to keep it real, that as much as I know this is my calling and this is my faith and this is my work, I still have work to do. And we as a denomination have work to do around how we perform allyship, how we perform connectivity, how in the past white women have asked us as Black women to show up for them in their stuff, but don't show up for our stuff when we're asking for the same kind of, reciprocity of justice kind of stuff. So just know that I'm excited that you're here and it's helping me work through some stuff. Because a lot of the times as a Black woman, I've never joined the Federation and even got a scholarship from y'all, which is why Ann sent the email to begin with. I didn't see it as a refuge for me, as a spiritual home. I only saw it as a financial refuge. And so I'm hoping that gets pulled apart and I get a better understanding. Go for it, Candace. Just jump on in.
Yes. I feel like everything that is being said, I feel like, me and Antoinette, like, we're not blind to a lot of the things, a lot of the critiques of the Women's Federation. Like, for instance, a lot of people see it as like a financial solace or for something to like step onto something else financially. And we've had those conversations in our team meetings about how do we change that. Everything you all are speaking of, we were brought on to fix those things, to address those things, to help navigate those things, to make it more diverse, more inclusive, to see, we haven't had the history of saying the right things or catering to different type of audiences. How can we fix that? And for them, it was fixing it by hiring 2 young Black women to be organizers in their organization. So I think that we are aware of all of those things. I know the question was brought up, like, do we know the history? And I think I went through 5 rounds of interviews to get the job. And a lot of it was about, like, how we're not hierarchical. How do you feel about calling someone in instead of calling someone out? Like, what do you think about, like, reading the room? And how do we, like, just nuances about relationships when we don't know somebody and you're working with them, how can we move past them? So we spent a lot of retreats and a lot of team calls on kind of like the elephant in the room, the more like easier to put it. So I definitely feel like we are aware of the history and we're organizing and speaking to our members because we don't want it to stay the same. I mean, that's like really what it is. But I definitely feel all of those sentiments and I know exactly where they're coming from.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think every time we say like, oh, we got hired by the Women's Federation, there's an eyebrow raise, like, oh, you got hired by the Women's Federation? They are hiring people and those people are Black? Yeah, I mean, they wanted to build these relationships, and part of it is they knew that they couldn't be a bunch of white people building these relationships with people of color and women of color and trans people. And so they I mean, this is going to sound bad. I want you to know that I love my job. I love my job a lot, but they hired the relationships they needed to build, right? Like they put people in the space to build the relationships they know they needed. And so, and I don't think that that's a bad play on Candace and I being used to get what the organization wants. I think that means that they knew what deep work needed to happen. And so they hired people. Like, I'm an organizer in Los Angeles already. I've been doing this work in this space. And so they hired us because we had the experience to build community. And I love that, like, I get to be you and build this community with you women. And I say women plus, actually, I think in that way. But I also love that I have, a partner like Candace who is still, who's not but gets to lean into this space with me, and it helps me personally deepen my faith, because then I can say, oh, this is how we do a thing, and are we doing it because it's worth doing, or are we doing it because it's tradition, right? Like, maybe we can change this around, maybe we can look into this a little bit deeper, and it really builds into the intentional and mindfulness of working in spaces like this.
And Antoinette, I just want to we need to pause a minute, because hiring and for the relationships you want to build, that is so you. That is so flipping you. And it's not just women. And thank you for naming that truth. Thank you for naming it, because you said it and I internalized it, and then I went, wow. In many, many ways, that has been my experience of Unitarian Universalism as a whole sometimes. And I think I'm sitting with it because it's so it's, if we can, like, now I want to join the Women's Federation. I've been a UU over 20 years. I've never wanted to join the Women's Federation until this second. And some of my, like, Kimberly Quinn Johnson is one of my best friends, and she's been on the board. And, like, it never even occurred to me to join when she was on the board. And now I'm like, okay, we have truth tellers that have been hired, and I am grateful that you are being paid for what you are bringing, your gifts and your skills and your talents. And I think there is a whole VU show to be had to talk about the ways UUs and UU institutions have a history of hiring for the relationships they want to build. So that is, I'm just sitting with it. And Kiana Dene, you and I both reacted. We both reacted to that statement. What was going on through your mind?
What came up for me is two things. One, we should always be hiring for the relationships we want to build. But the second thing that came up, I think, when either one of you was talking, was actually this idea that part of this work, part of my ministry, I can't speak for y'all's ministry, but for my ministry, is to be a web tender. I think of our interconnected web, and my job is to tend the web. And so if this part of the web needs help, and somebody doesn't know how to be on that side of the web, I don't mind being a web tender to be between those two dynamics and those two relationships, but it has to be out front in the open. You know what's going on and they know what's going on. It's toxic when only one side of this equation knows what's happening, but you all got to come in eyes open. The community is eyes open. And it means that when there's an ouch or a harm, you can call into it, not out of it. And you can step into tending the web and healing it. So for me, you spoke to something really beautiful, that if folks started hiring for the relationships that they needed and then worked within those relationships to do some of the healing, we would be a whole different people, right? Like the possibility that lies on the other end of people seeing their job is not like the thing I have to do every day to pay the bills, which, you know, is its own energy. But if they thought of it as, I was hired to make sure the relationships this other community wants can have. Whoo, that's a different vantage point.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I think that work comes from intentionality, being intentional, like transparency, being intentional, being purposeful. Like, yeah, definitely. So I would just want to say, like, was there a problem in necessarily hiring for the relationships that you want to have? But I think that you said it so artfully that if you manage those relationships, how they can lead to others and better and healthier ones. So I think that's great.
So I want to lean into a little bit of the work that you guys have been able to do in the short amount of time you've been at the table, which is, I know, because I get all the emails because I got that scholarship. Now I'm on the email list, which is fine. But I know that y'all have some big events going on and some activities and just change of energy that y'all have been engaging in. Can you give us that kind of that rundown? And just as a sidebar, if you put any of it in the chat over there, Tanner will make sure that it also gets out to the world. So if you talk about the 60th, we'll make sure that people see it too.
Nice.
Yeah, so we're gearing up to our 60th anniversary. Like I said, Women's Fed's been around since 63, so we're hitting our 60th anniversary. We want to come out strong to GA this year. We are going to have a leadership panel on the 26th. So next Thursday, we're having a leadership panel with women within our organization, Dr. Susan Frederick Ray, Reverend Harami from Side with Love, Leonisa from Ministry for Earth, and I'm blanking on the other person. Reverend Sarah Green. Yeah, Reverend Sarah Green from Lifespan Office. And so we're going to be talking about our priority issues and the things that we're focusing on for this next year. Yeah, we did. We got to build programming. That was my favorite thing, is that we got to have ongoing connections with people. So we have a monthly community gathering, and that will be tonight, our third Thursdays, who knows what day it is, Thursdays of the month are our community gatherings, where we just have our open sessions where you come and we talk for an hour about what's on our hearts and what our community is really into. Last month was our chat about the Article 2 Commission, and we had a lot of people who weren't sure what it was or how it would change, and so we brought in somebody to talk about that. Tonight we're going to talk more about what it means to be turning 60 in this organization, why that's important, what that means for us moving forward. Candace, I feel like there are other events that I'm blanking on. Oh, we have a book club. We have a monthly book club that's the first Sundays at 4 p.m. Pacific. And this month's read is Brave, Not Perfect. And so all of these pieces come in to help, like I said, grow these relationships we want, but also build upon the social justice work that's happening in the greater UU universe, as well as what people are really interested in doing in their own congregations and in their own personal lives.
Antoinette, have you all read Undrowned, Black Feminist Lessons from Marine Mammals? Because that's a great book for the UU Women's Federation Book Club.
We
It was
as
introduced
an
by
organization,
Kiana Dene. Huh?
yeah, we as an organization have not. I've read it and I love it, and it will definitely be added to our list of things. It is phenomenal. It's one of those like slow process reads, I will say.
Oh yeah.
Real deep in there. But yeah, it's definitely on our list of books to check out. We wanted to do Mistakes and Miracles, and then they were sold out and we couldn't do that because everybody had already had. Like they sold out. So it's back in order. I did get an email that there are copies now that you can order from the UUA, but we couldn't when we wanted to. So I'll make space for Candace.
One thing that I was just going to add was that our monthly community gatherings grew from a meet and greet that we had when me and Antoinette were hired. And so much of the surprise when it's like, oh, we're introducing our 2 new hires to our community gathering, and there's these 2 young Black women on a screen full of Zoom of like 80-year-old white women. So I just think that it was just funny, like from that point on, they were like, we want to see more of you all. Like, we want to talk to y'all. Like they told us that they wanted to meet with us every month. And it just became like this space where we're interconnected. Like, and so what are you working on, and what are you doing, and how can you help, and how do you want support, and what do you want to talk about? So it became like, it really grew out of a meet and greet of people just being excited that they had new faces, that new things were happening, that new things could come from this. So I like Antoinette said, I definitely feel like the programming, building like the newsletter announcements and our social media, we have an Instagram now. So all of these new things are coming to reach new audiences. So I thought that was just really exciting because we've always had a lot of love from our members as soon as we were brought on board, because like, we're excited. We want to see what's going on. So we have all these things going on now. So that's really good too.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I think I expected there to be, not like pushback, but definitely I didn't expect people to be like, oh yes, more please. Because we knew the history, because we were treading a little bit at a time to say, okay, we're going to make these changes, we're going to center these things, we're going to do, we have like an online Mighty Networks community, we're going to do all of these things via Zoom, we're going to send out the newsletter via email, right? Like we're going to less paper, things like that, things that are more technology, newer technology. And we got like some pushback on it, but for the most part, people were like, yes, please keep this coming. We want more and more of this. And so it feels like we're on the right track.
Yeah. Danae, you're muted.
I keep muting myself because I sneeze and then I forget. I had a question, but I want to make sure other folks I didn't overtalk anybody. So before yesterday, actually, I'm starting to write my March sermon, which is about the intersectionality of womanhood and Unitarian Universalism. And really looking at you guys' page in terms of like learning history and learning about Unitarian Universalism and women and that intersection. But I would love to hear a little bit about how you see this Unitarian Universalism and woman, whatever that means all the time, intersects as we go forward, right? Like you talk a little bit about June, you've talked a little bit about GA, but I'd love to hear about how this looks going forward. What's the forward momentum? Where do you see this this intersection taking us, or where could we end up? Let's dream together. I like to dream.
I think that we could essentially, in the way that we are good at providing financial support for women plus leadership, I think that we could be a hub to provide more tangible learning sessions and webinars and things like that. I think that's really our goal, is to help push the leadership of women both in the organization and farther into just religious women in general, right? Is to break through the UU packaging so that we could support leadership amongst women in femmes in any kind of capacity, I think is really what we're trying to build to in more tangible ways. I think the financial piece is actually really important. I think that Women's Federation prides itself on being able to support women, and especially women of color, in the ways with the Marjorie Boyd Wheatley recipient scholarships, because they knew that they couldn't do the other piece. And so now I think that the idea is that we can do both of those pieces, right? We can provide financial support and also build those covenantal relationships so that we can have this leadership role throughout the organization moving forward. I know somebody asked how many members we have. I have no idea. I mean, if you've been around for 60 years and every time, like, we don't delete your email address. So there's probably like 500 or 600 people on our email list, maybe.
Really, I think it's more than that.
I don't know. I've never looked at it.
I want to say, yeah, when the newsletter goes out, it lets us know like how many people are in this group that is going to. And maybe I have like 30 unsubscribed, but I want to say it's like 2,000 in our email list.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just know that at General Assembly, the Women's Federation has better food than any other party. And how have I not joined? They always have such a great, like, snacks and dinner and shit. And I never, I don't know. Like, y'all need to have forms out for me when you're giving me the taco, and I would join.
It takes more than appetizers to get Aisha Hauser
Probably
to join
because
your
it's a
organization.
breakfast. I will say that we've done a breakfast in the past couple of years, and we did a reception. We did an evening reception this past year, and people were like, "Thank you for not making me get up so early."
Yeah, do the nighttime. The evening reception. That's where you all had tacos. Really good food.
Yes.
I'm
so
interested
great.
too in the priority issues that you're working on. Can you tell us a little bit more about those issues and what you hope people will engage with?
Definitely. So right now we're entering our Women and Work priority issue. And so every campaign, we have 4 priority issues. It's Women in Work. Antoinette, help me.
Poverty.
Women
in poverty, which will focus
health.
on homelessness. Women's health, which will focus on reproductive issues and fat phobia. And women in leadership is what we're doing now. There's one more. Ending domestic violence, ending violence against women. So that's domestic violence. Part of that for us is also uplifting the missing and murdered women and girls. That's been happening during the pipelines and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, was that all 4?
Yeah, I think that's all 4.
Poverty, violence, health.
Yes, and so each campaign, each priority issue has a campaign that runs 3 months. And in the campaigns, we have pre-campaign, we have introduction to campaign, and we have action phase. So in each campaign, we like to run physical resources like toolkits, infographics, social media content, curated content that educates people on the priority issue. And as well, we have panel discussions with other UU people where we talk about the issues. And then amongst that, we also have action items, like how you can be involved in something dealing with the campaign. So for instance, like Women in Work, we have focused on pay equity and women in leadership. We're going to have a women in leadership panel. We have a toolkit that provides definitions and information about pay equity and know your rights, dealing with like workers' compensation and things like that. So just out of every campaign, we really want to just provide tangible resources, and then at the end, actual physical action items for people to get involved in their community, whether that is start a rally, send a letter, host a party, like, you know, just different type of action. We're still building it out in the process, but each priority issues runs for a 3-month-long campaign. And right now, February is the start of the Women in Work campaign.
Yeah, so we want to use each of these 3-month campaigns as like an on-ramp to kind of the justice work in it. So there's a lot of people, because we know a lot of people in our membership are older people who maybe don't want to go do a rally, but we're building up to the kind of people who might want to go do a rally. We need to have the types of content everywhere in between, right? What you can do at home, what you can do out, what you can write to your congressperson, tips on how to engage with these really interesting topics and things like that.
So I have a question as someone who now identifies as and is perceived as and moves through the world as male. All of this sounds really awesome, and I'm ministering to a small congregation in rural Pennsylvania, and I would love to get access to and use these resources and stuff. But it doesn't seem appropriate for me to join the federation, no matter what it says on my driver's license. What how do I? Is there a way for me to get access to this really cool resources to use in my congregation?
So the resources that we send out to our membership, it'll be the kinds of things that are on our website, right? So the things that you won't have access to is like the community gatherings or the online Mighty Networks community space. But the resources that we provide, which will be on social media and on our website, those would be available for anyone to use and hold on to. And if you are on our mailing list, then those would go straight to your inbox. So our mailing list is not just, I think, membership, right? If you want to get any kind of resources or any kind of support from us, it is available. We ask that you self-select the like events that we go to. If that makes sense.
So I'll throw one more in the burner, in the hotness. And I'm off mute. That was good. Good job, Kiana Dene. I do believe it's the anniversary of Roe versus Wade. One of those things that Unitarian Universalism was way ahead of the curve around being like, yo, body sovereignty.
In 3 days.
So are you guys doing anything around that? Is there any information on your website that you all are providing around just resourcing folks as they navigate that intersection again of, you know, I'm always looking at the intersection of like the world and Unitarian Universalism, and then all of our little micro niches in there. So I'm just curious about if you guys are acknowledging that, how that's going for y'all, and then for the folks in the room who are preaching on Sunday, how does that all come into play? How do you make that intersection? How do you take the work that these folks are doing in the name of the Federation and make it manifest in our congregations? How does it live beyond right now?
Yeah, I think you might be a little disappointed in this, but we are not having any big push for the anniversary of Roe v. Wade. And part of it, I think, is that the Women's Federation has spent so much time historically only doing reproductive justice that we decided that we need to expand. We need to do more than talk about abortion. We are of course support it. You know, women who are on the board of the Women's Federation wrote the AIW that was voted on this year at GA. But the work of reproductive justice and abortion rights is not the only thing that we want to celebrate and support. And so it hasn't been our complete focus, which has been upsetting for some people. But like the universe is huge, and there are lots of organizations that are providing resources and trainings at a much deeper level than we ever could at this moment.
Thank you for saying that. What I threw in the chat was this, and what came up for me when you were talking as I'm snapping away over here is if we only focus on reproductive justice, we are missing so many other injustices. Reproductive justice is an injustice, do not get me wrong, but poverty is an injustice. Housing injustice, environmental factors where we have folks who are living, when we still have, Flint doesn't have water. Flint doesn't have water. You know who lives in Flint? Women and children. Flint doesn't have water. So like, I'm glad that I have, you know, I live in a state, I live in Michigan, I have access to resources and people, and I know how to navigate if I needed to do reproductive justice in my own womb. I know how to do that. But I also want to drink clean water and have safe places to eat. And I want access to educational accountability for my educators and my schools and other things. So thank you for not being handheld to an issue that matters, but doesn't matter in the entirety of the web, right? The web needs, all of the web needs tending. We cannot get stuck in one part of the web.
Well, it also matters more to white women because pre-Roe v. Wade, I mean, Black and brown women have not had bodily autonomy in the same way white women have. So it is, you know, I'm telling the truth, Candace. You're laughing, you know. It's true, right?
Yeah.
When Black and brown women were getting sterilized, not in just a few years ago, and it was, you know, in the immigration centers. How many people were out in the streets, and white women? How many? It was only until, because there has been the delusion, especially of white women in this country, that it's not going to touch them, because they thought if they were in close proximity to white men in power, they were under the delusion that they weren't going to lose their reproductive rights. And look what happened, with the help of a white woman on the Supreme Court. So there's that. So I just,
Aisha, when did you start tea time? It's tea time up in here. Ready? When you, I think that I'm going to be something there. White women love reproductive politics, not one, because they need to, but two, because it makes them, it's one of the few areas they have power over and that they can control and manipulate. I can't just fight for my reproductive organs. I have to fight for my skin. I have to fight for my health care. I have to fight for my kids. I have to fight for my babies. I have to fight for economic justice. So I don't have time to get stalled on a single issue. I believe my ancestor, I believe Mrs. Lord, Reverend Lord, said, we do not live single issue lives. And so we cannot be single issue problem solvers, right? I don't have the privilege of being a single issue being. So if you got your teacup, get your teacup up. It sounds like we are, it sounds like we know the drill, and I'm just delighted to have y'all. Oh, look, the cow. I might have to call. I have a cup fetish.
What? I love that cup.
It's a problem.
That is awesome.
That is awesome. The Sunday mug is real around here. My 12-year-old, just so y'all know, he said to me on Saturday, Mama, have you picked your mug for tomorrow? And I thought, well, dang, it's a group activity now. So
your mug looks like my dog.
It does.
So cute. No, that's Gracie. Okay.
We got about 4 minutes left, y'all. What's the last thing you want on the hot plate? DC, do you got anything on the hot plate?
Oh, Lord, no, you don't need another white voice in this conversation.
And that was the perfect thing to say. Bless your heart in the non-Southern way. Michael, Tino.
Let's ask the other white person. I want to give Candace and Antoinette the last word here. Candace, you look like you wanted to say something in response to Aisha, so I'll toss it to you first, and then Antoinette.
Well, I don't remember now because I'm just like been laughing and having a good time. But like, I just want to say thank you all so much. And one thing that I thought about too was like this conversation has reminded me of like some of the pushback we initially received when people found out that we were only prioritizing 1 month reproductive justice in our women's health campaign. They was like, after all of Roe v. Wade, after all of this stuff, you're only gonna provide 1 month for reproductive justice. But I think this conversation just illuminates how we have to focus on other things, and we have to prioritize other things in our organization and what's important to who and how can we get that done. So just want to say thank you so much for this conversation, and we will definitely be bringing these things back to our team, back to Anne, so we can really like start pushing out more and more great things.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us on. And yeah, like I said, I think all of this proves that we're on the right track. We're doing exactly what we need to. When we have women of color that's like, hey, let me join, then yeah, we're doing it. That's the goal.
That means y'all have to join now. Y'all got to. I'm
Oh,
gonna
I'm
drop that in the chat.
I'm right when we hang. I'm joining now.
Aisha's
today.
like on the website, filling
Yeah.
out the
website.
form.
I'm a
as we speak.
student, and do y'all got a student discount? Because the girls in seminary.
Well, our membership is no cost to join now.
Oh, well, then
Yeah,
it's done. I got you.
that's the biggest change. We are the point is not the money, right? The point is the community, and so money should no longer be an entry barrier. So barrier to entry.
You should have led with the no money.
No money.
We should have brought that up in one of the updates. We should have said that.
Yeah, no money.
Well, it's a
You
good thing to
can
end
donate.
on.
Yeah,
Yes.
that is.
If you are inspired out there in VU land by the things you've heard, you can join the UU Women's Federation for no cost. And it has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you, Candace. Thank you, Antoinette. Thank you, UU Women's Federation, for this really exciting work that I think will transform Unitarian Universalism. This has been The View, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for joining us. Special thanks to those of you who give generously to this ministry. It is because of you that this ministry is possible. You can click the link in the description to give now, or visit clfuu.org/give for more information. We hope you will join us next week for another episode of The View.